So if you think I'm going to believe that they'll take $40 billion out of our economy and just trust them, that it's going to come back, I don't.
Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. Today we've got Doug Ford threatening to increase the price of electricity on Monday for 3 states in America. We've got Danielle Smith blasting Trudeau, saying he's untrustworthy. We've got an update from the group going down to Washington, trying to pitch their case for Alberta to join America. And we've got the bumbling buffoon David Eby announcing some plans that BC is doing to strike back at Donald Trump and his tariffs. Let's jump into this. First off, we got some polling data here. Don't read into this. This is more of a comedy hour here, but this is latest Ecos poll modeled out. So this one here shows the Liberals at 40.7% and the Conservatives at 35%. Okay, 202 seats for the Liberals, 108 for the Conservatives. Yeah, okay, yeah. I'm not going to be putting my bingo chips on this. Please don't take this poll serious. I mean, this company needs to be like thrown in the garbage. Come on. This is not real polling data. How is this legal? Exactly. Frank Graves needs to be arrested. Frank should do polling for Putin. Do you realize this looks like a liberal wish list rather than an actual poll? Next up, we got this one from the Justice Center for Constitutional Reforms. It says the federal court has dismissed the constitutional challenge to the Prime Minister's decision to prorogue Parliament. Our lawyers are now reviewing the pages, etc. Justin Trudeau lost, but it doesn't matter. They waited so long, they delayed this out. It doesn't matter if they come back tomorrow and say, oh, Justin Trudeau has to go back to the House of Commons because he's going to be out the door here in a couple of days. Canadian federal courts are infiltrated by bad actors that have just shown Canadians that we truly don't live in a democracy. Welcome to Venezuela. Next up, we have one of the most bizarre clips. We'll see if Justin Trudeau, I'm not going to spoil it. Just listen to this.
No one in Canada should ever be afraid to call themselves a Zionist. I am a Zionist.
This guy's a thespian actor. Get real. You've let people prance around in our streets chanting for the end of an entire group of people. Now he's saying he's a Zionist. He's the least genuine person on the planet. It's like he's speedrunning to become the most unlikable PM in history. No, he already is. Got this one from CBC Watcher. It says 14.6 million Canadians are currently insolvent, unable to afford bills and debt, and their income, according to the MNP Consumer Debt Index, conducted by Ipsos, one of the most cited sources for assessing Canadian finances. Latest report from January 15th, covering Q4 2024, found that 35% of surveyed Canadians reported being broke, unable to meet their financial obligations with current income. This is so sad. Policies in this country are so bad, and yet we still have Liberals supporting Justin Trudeau, now Mark Carney. Why? Why won't they wake up and just read the headlines? Just pick a random newspaper. You'll find the headlines. They're all over the place. Check out this new ad by the Liberal Party here, trying to retie Pierre Poilievre to Donald Trump, even though Donald Trump came out and said, oh, he's not a MAGA guy and that whole thing, which has really helped Poilievre in the polls recently.
We want those great Canadian truckers to know that we are with them all the way.
I'm proud of the truckers and I stand with them.
I was out at an overpass as the truckers went by, and what I saw were cheerful, patriotic, optimistic Canadians.
We want those great Canadian truckers to know that we are with them all the way.
They're just going to keep playing that one clip of Trump. This Liberal Party is disgusting. They locked bank accounts and should be sued into the Stone Age, every single one of them, for doing that. So next up, we got a bit of an update here on the tariff situation. This one posted by Brian Lilly. This is a CBS Evening News here from America.
The financial markets were rattled today by the commander-in-chief and general confusion.
Conflicting signals from the president about his trade war sent stock prices tumbling. The Dow lost a full percent. The Nasdaq more than 2.5%.
President Trump granted more exemptions today to his 25% tax on imports from Canada and Mexico. For 1 month, goods covered by the USMCA trade agreement will not be subject to the tariffs. He gave that same exemption yesterday to Detroit's big 3 automakers.
This is not the first time the president has threatened or imposed tariffs and pulled back, and the uncertainty goes well beyond Wall Street. Ed O'Keefe is at a curling center in Toronto. Ed?
John, good evening. The on-again, off-again tariffs are mostly off-again, except for here in Canada's largest province, which is warning of economic pain for at least some Americans.
We have to put an end to this. This is mass chaos right now around North America and actually around the world.
Doug Ford is Premier of Ontario, the hub of Canada's economy and home to 40% of Canadians. He dismissed President Trump's pause on tariffs.
So something to note, the tariffs, I believe, as far as I can tell, are still coming for aluminum and steel next week, as well as forestry tariffs are still on, but all the other ones are paused?
He said that before, and he switched his mind a few days later or a week later. So once I touch a stove and I get burned once, I don't touch that stove again. He needs to drop all tariffs.
And if he doesn't drop them for good, Ford says Ontario, which transmits electricity to the United States, will put a 25% tariff on power sent to Minnesota, Michigan, and New York starting Monday. Ford got into a heated phone conversation this week with the U.S. Commerce Secretary and has banned the sale of American-made spirits in Ontario liquor stores.
So something to note about that I was talking about on the channel just the other day, about instead of cutting off the electricity and starting an actual real conflict with America, increasing the prices, and that's what he's doing. He's not getting Justin Trudeau to put a tariff on, though. He's just increasing the price directly from Ontario. So Ontario collects that money and then they can divvy it up. I'll show in the next clip, Danielle Smith refuses to have Justin Trudeau be involved in any sort of tariffs with Alberta, just for the same reason. If she needs to increase the price of oil, she wants the money coming in directly to Alberta instead of Justin Trudeau taking it and then having him deliver it, which he won't because he's a loser.
So if I hear you, you're turning off the lights and you're running the bourbon dry in response to what the United States is doing.
The last thing I want to do is turn out the lights. I'll put a tariff, but let's straighten this out.
And to the American homeowner in Minnesota or New York or somewhere else that gets its power from electricity,
yes,
they're going to see the electric bill in a month and they're going to realize, whoa,
yes,
a lot more expensive than it was.
That's
what
correct.
You tell them.
And there's one person to be blamed, and that's President Trump.
Even if the tariffs are temporarily off, the anger has hardly subsided at the private Royal Canadian Curling Club, where members stopped drinking American bourbon and California wines on the premises weeks ago.
This is one small thing that we can do.
And Danielle Brown says growing Canadian anger isn't about the American people, just the American president.
It's really just sad and a shame.
I mean, it is. It's really sad because all these businesses now in North America in general, down south and up north here, are all going to get affected because of all this stupid stuff, because these stupid tariffs. Donald Trump is like a wrecking ball. He just, wherever he swings, he just absolutely obliterates the thing and goes through it. I mean, you're seeing this with the whole Doge situation, just blasting through that. He unleashed Elon and his full team, and they're uncovering all those scandals. But in this case, the wrecking ball is pointed at tariffs. In Canada, the wrecking ball is also causing havoc here. We need to aim the wrecking ball away from Canada at this point.
And that leadership is actually, maybe for positioning, who knows why, kind of trumping up these allegations that we're maybe not as good partners as we actually are.
Now, Ed, we usually think of Canadians and
Trump's tariff doesn't reflect the relationships of all Canadians and Americans. That's what's sad about this, because it is affecting it now, even though this is just one man's decision.
kindness, but in this case, they seem pretty angry right about now. Why are they digging in so hard?
Well, Maurice, in their view, and the reality is there have been free trade agreements between the U.S. and Canada in place since the late 1980s. Many may remember NAFTA, more recently the U.S., Mexico, Canada free trade agreement that was negotiated in part by President Trump. They're sick of being pushed around, and they're not quite sure what it is the president wants done by early April to call off this trade war entirely.
We all know what it is. It's Justin Trudeau. He's been a disaster for our country. He's a national risk to the Americans, and he has to go. The Liberals have to go. All of them, not just Trudeau. They're all a national foreign risk to our own country and to America. They're compromised. They can't be trusted. They have to go.
We are not going to accept these continual threats, this continued uncertainty. We're going to stand up for Canadians. This is unacceptable. And we're going to ensure that the Americans understand how pissed off we are.
And that's why we increased our salaries and we took away that $1,000 we promised to every British Columbian. This guy's just a bag of wind, just a worthless bag of wind. A fart in a bag would be more valuable than David Eby. Here we got this bumbling buffoon, David Eby, announcing new legislation to push back against Trump. New tariff response law will give BC new tools to respond to Trump's trade war, including removing interprovincial trade barriers. They should have done this years ago. It's sad that it's taking Donald Trump to fix this problem in the country. Like, seriously. Low carbon fuels added to gas and diesel must be Canadian. Tolls on U.S. commercial vehicles traveling to Alaska. So they'll be tolling all the vehicles going through now, all commercial vehicles, which is interesting. What David Eby and the BC NDP are doing here is reckless. There are currently no tariffs in place. It's crystal clear David Eby wants a trade war. He does, for sure. Soft on the street fennel, soft on the borders, preemptive attacks on U.S. goods. David Eby has created this problem with the safe supply. Let's just say it as it is. He's created a major aspect of this problem, obviously coming in from China as well, but David Eby's to blame. Soft on scanning the sea cans. He's got corrupt Chinese ties. One of his advisors is a member of the United Front, the CCP group, but there's no word on that. Definitely not going to clean that up. No. Next up, we got Danielle Smith pushing back and saying there's no way she's going to be giving over money she collects. If she has to increase the price of oil to America, there's not a chance she's going to let that go through the federal government and Justin Trudeau.
Another aspect of Canada's response, and I know you fielded a number of questions about this over the last few months, it's around, what we do beyond counter tariffs, and in particular around energy exports. I've asked a number of federal ministers, what they're prepared to do, because clearly you would not provide your consent for that, and neither would Scott Moe. They have never unequivocally said that they would proceed without that consent, just that they would not want one region to unfairly shoulder the burden, essentially, of our response. If the federal government can compensate Albertans, for example, for whatever losses they end up taking, should that be the route they decide to pursue? Why is that not satisfactory for you? Like, why doesn't that add up? Because I think to a lot of Canadians that would be one way out of it.
Well, I noticed Ontario Premier Doug Ford didn't ask for a tariff on electricity. He imposed a surcharge himself so that he could receive the money, so that he could make sure it was directed to his people. And I must tell you, there's no circumstances under which I would acquiesce to a major tariff being put on Alberta energy to go to Ottawa so Ottawa could decide how it's distributed. And quite frankly, the trust is gone with the federal government. They canceled pipelines. They've banned exports off the West Coast. They have put in a net zero power reg. They talked about an emissions cap. So if you think I'm going to believe that they'll take $40 billion out of our economy and just trust them, that it's going to come back, I don't. So no, it's not on. We're not going to agree to that. And nor should Ontarians and Quebecers want us to, because if the Americans retaliate by putting also restrictions on energy, it's Ontarians and Quebecers who are going to be harmed by that. 100% of the product that they get to heat their homes and run their cars comes from the United States. So just...
Yeah, so that pipeline comes from Alberta down into America and then back up into Ontario and Quebec. So if she puts a tariff on that, they will probably put a tariff back when that oil flows back up to them, oil and gas, and screwing over those two provinces. A lot of people pushing back against Danielle Smith right now and Pierre Poilievre. This is not a simple situation. It's easy to sit at home or be on your phone and just try to call the shots. It's not that simple being in the hot seat here. She's doing her best here. This is not an easy job. And Doug Ford, well, I don't really like the guy that much. Sometimes he does good things. Sometimes he pushes back against Trudeau. Sometimes he's licking his boots. But I think in general, Doug Ford, when he's dealing with media in America, he does a pretty good job, just because he opens with, we love Americans. We want to be friends with Americans. We love you guys, all that kind of stuff. It sets a good tone. It's just when he flip-flops and then suddenly he's got his arm around his good buddy Justin Trudeau, the guy's a little too slippery. He's a liberal conservative. So regardless, this is not an easy situation, because this is not just a normal person they're dealing with. It's Donald Trump. And Donald Trump will only respond when he is pushed back, because he responds to strength. They can't just lay down and take it. They have to do something.
No, that I'm acting in the interest of all of the country and saying that you don't want to play a war on energy. Canada will be worse off for it.
But you've also talked at length about the degree to which that relationship on energy is interdependent. And in fact, that actually the U.S. benefits greatly from the discount that they're able to take through receiving oil from this country. So I understand, and I've put a lot of questions to federal ministers about all you laid out where the trust has been broken. But if a formal agreement is reached in which they promise every cent of that revenue will go back to Albertans to, quote unquote, make them whole, why would you oppose that?
Well, because we've tried to get a renegotiation around equalization, because Alberta already pays $25 billion more into Confederation than we get back in benefits, and they flat out refuse. So I'm sorry, the trust is broken there. And I would say let's find a way to work on the things that we can agree on. And we've managed to get some great agreement at the table on the kind of goods that should be tariff because we can find alternatives to them. We're also acting in concert to make sure that we're buying locals to support Alberta and Canadian products, as well as to support the products with the countries we have free trade agreements with that are being honored. And so let's find areas that we can agree on rather than areas that we'll disagree on.
It's interesting to hear her talk so frank now because like Trudeau and the Liberals, they just burned the trust of all Canadians, including the premiers of other provinces. If there was a tariff put on Alberta oil that came from Justin Trudeau, we know full well that that money would not go back to Alberta. It would end up in someone's bank account. Stephen Guilbeault, another Arrive scam, you name it. It would not end up in Canadians' pockets. It would end up in Liberals' pockets.
Even if it holds back our response, even if it holds back one of our biggest pieces of leverage?
Bashi, there's no circumstance under which I would agree to another tax on Alberta that takes $40 billion out of Alberta. You can ask me as much as you like. The answer is no.
Okay, I'll leave it on that note. Thanks very much, Premier.
So what's interesting about this is she has to stay calm on this and neutral. She can't put a tariff on that because, as I mentioned, the oil goes back up. Where Doug Ford's sending electricity down, he doesn't get the same lashback from America, so he can put that on and he holds the cards there. Technically, they could put a tariff on the oil coming from Alberta up to Ontario in response to the electricity increase, though. So we will see what happens. The reason why Trump has pulled it back, it seems, because the auto sector was getting hammered. Danielle Smith came out saying we're not going to negotiate the oil contract anymore, which America needs desperately. All of the stumbling Jews pulled off the shelves. Who knew? America sells a ton of stumbling Jews to Canada, along with a bunch of other smaller things. Somebody probably whispered in Trump's ear and said, hey, this is not the right battle to take on right here. This is going to make you look bad. Stock market's crashing. You're supposed to be the stock market guy where things go up. Food prices are already going up in America because a lot of their produce comes from Mexico. So it'll be interesting to see what happens here because we're going to get an election hopefully soon here, and then Trump will be dealing with hopefully Pierre Poilievre. Next up, we've got a clip of the lawyer who's gathering this group from Alberta that's going to Washington. Apparently they got the ear of someone high up in the Trump administration about Alberta separating and joining America.
Going to make Canada the 51st state, and a group in Alberta is apparently on board. Jeffrey Rath is leading that group, a lawyer from Alberta. He has that delegation behind him. Jeff, how big is your delegation? Tell me the feeling you are for joining America.
Hundreds of Albertans that are reaching out and volunteering to join our delegation. Right now, our group is very small. It's a steering committee of people that are looking to come to Washington on an exploratory basis and meet with a representative appointed by President Trump to explore the benefits of either Alberta becoming an independent sovereign nation with economic union to the United States, becoming a U.S. territory, or pursuing full statehood.
Well, how is Canada?
Those are our goals.
God, how has Canada lost their way? How has Canada lost their way that makes you think you got to join us?
This is a disaster. I don't know if there's a delay. He just keeps talking over him. What's more realistic is if America offered citizenship for Canadians who want to come over like really easily. That seems like a better solution than trying to just nab an entire province, especially the most prosperous province in Canada.
Trudeau and Carney, are all wringing their hands over the tariffs. They're going to be kicking Albertans in the teeth and bringing in a 21% carbon tax increase in April. This is, the carbon tax itself is just an insult to hardworking Albertans that can't afford to heat their homes and can't afford diesel and gas for their cars and trucks to go to work. That's a big part of why it is that people in Alberta are fed up with being governed by idiotic politicians from Quebec and Ontario that do not understand our province and do not understand that culturally we're far more closely affiliated with our friends to the south in Montana than we are with all of the people in Ottawa wringing their hands over the smell of diesel exhaust when people from Alberta come to protest how badly we're being treated by Ottawa.
What's your message to Donald Trump? 10 seconds.
10 seconds. Greenland self-determination. Please support Alberta self-determination. You promised that to Alberta in the same way you promised it to Greenland. We'll be an excellent partner to the United States and we'll all prosper.
All right, we'll see how big your delegation gets, Jeff, how many calls you get, and maybe, Jeff, you will be governor of our 51st state when it's all said and done.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. When you asked him how many people, he said hundreds of people. I mean, as a lot of people in the comments here saying 4.8 million Albertans. hundreds is not going to move the needle here. If it was a couple thousand, then there would probably be some teeth to it. But who knows? Maybe there'll be a referendum in Alberta. Who knows? It's time he moved to Texas. I mean, that's, I think, more realistic. If a lot of Canadians in Alberta don't want to be in Alberta or just really want to be a part of America, offer citizenship. That's what Trump should open it up to. Well, there you have it. More chaos in Canada. This just doesn't seem to end. It is every single day, day after day, month after month, year after year in this country. When will we get a common sense government that makes Canada a great country once again?